author Alice Walker has successfully published one of America's most inspiring manuscripts and collaborated with Hollywood's top talent in turning her words into an award-winning film. But is she ready for what lies ahead?
She pretty much said no.
I really had to be persuaded.
And I said, you know, it's such a powerful piece written about women, and clearly you are very connected to women's energy, and, you know, one might even call Alice a feminist. I said, you know, I've had the privilege of working with some really amazing women in my life as performers, as a producer at Radio City Music Hall. You know, if you want to call some of them and just get a reference on me, you know, feel free to do so. And she said, all right, I'll do that. So I gave her Diana Ross's phone number, Bette Midler's phone number, and Shirley MacLaine's phone number.
And I like these women, and I've learned to really listen to the counsel of women.
She called me about 3-4 weeks later, and she said, you know, I called them, and they said nice things about you, and I'm open to this now.
Behind it all was just a feeling about Scott, that he was very decent and very caring, and that he would do his very best.
And I said, you know, why don't you come to New York as my guest? I'll fly to New York. Let's go see some shows. Let me talk to you about my vision for the piece. And she came. And then the last night before she was going to go home, we went and had dinner alone, and she said, all right, I'm going to let you do this.
With Alice's blessing in hand, Scott now goes in search of those who will turn her words into a popular musical score. However, with such an important task facing him, he isn't about to rush the process.
When I looked at the history of musical theater, and you see how many musicals have largely been written by white men, and great musicals with large black casts, from whether it's Porgy and Bess or Dreamgirls, again, not written by women and not written by African Americans. And I just felt in my soul that to do this show justice and to do The Color Purple with a level of authenticity, that I wanted to have African American and female voices in the authorship.
With all the qualified musical composers who could have done this job, this should have been an easy task. However, it took over 2 years to find the team that would become the voice of this precious project.
Scott told me that he got the rights to The Color Purple, so for almost 2 years he was talking to me about what songwriters, you know, should do this. Finally, he said to me, I'm going to give you the name of 50 songwriters. Tell me who you think should submit spec songs. And he got to the name of Brenda Russell. And Brenda, Stephen, and myself were scoring 2 animated series. And he said Brenda, and I thought, if I don't say anything now, I'm never going to say anything. And I asked if we could compete together as a team. And he said, fine, but no special favors. And it was like, no special favors? 2 years you haven't even thought of them.
I was talking to a friend of mine, Allee Willis, who had written amazing songs, collaborated on writing Earth, Wind & Fire's Boogie Wonderland in September, and just an amazing talent. And I said one day, don't you know Brenda Russell? And she said, Brenda's going to be at my house in about an hour. I got to Allee's house, and Brenda Russell was there, and STEPHENBRAY was there as well, a wonderful songwriter who had written Papa Don't Preach and Express Yourself for Madonna, and Brenda Russell, who of course is a brilliant singer-songwriter, Get Here, Piano in the Dark. And here was this trio of 2 women, 2 African Americans, and they were, you know, passionate about doing it.
We gave him such an air of confidence, like we shocked ourselves, I think, because we all knew we had no idea what we were doing, basically, but we believed that we could do it, and we were quick learners.
Scott wasn't holding his breath that the 3 would do any better than the 20 or so others who had already taken a shot at the score. However, this time would be different.
The 3 of us sat together and we were working, and we're like, wait a minute, we got something going on here.
Our sound was so
really cool.
How do you keep the music authentic, but not so it sounds like a review? Like, what we didn't want was a bunch of blues songs and a bunch of gospel songs.
We are in Willisville. I don't know if you guys know, but that you're in Willisville, which is the world that Allie's created, and in that world, everything happens differently. Instead of reaching for the piano, you reach for the kitchen drawer and you pull out cutlery.
It was such a different sound. They had gone in and pulled egg beaters and washboards out of Allee's kitchen.
These kinds of sounds that we had were sort of earthy sounds, and it really gave, everyone seemed to
Well, and it
vibe
made
on
it
that.
fun, too.
Yeah.
Other people would be playing drums, and we're playing, you know, lots of pots and pans.
What she wear?
And Brenda sang the vocals on it, which was to die for. And I thought, oh my God, this is really something. This is really different.
I remember the morning we sent the tape in. We know FedEx, we know what time he's getting it. We're waiting. We think we have totally blown the gig, which we were so confident that we had. And like hours later, Scott calls going, "Oh, I forgot to call you guys."
We've been dancing around.
We've been dancing
parking all day.
around.
And I sent them to Alice, and I said, I think we may have it.
And she said that she put it in her car. She was terrified to listen because she had heard a lot of stinky songs up to that point. And that she put it in her car, and she drove around for something like 6 hours, not being able to take it off.
She said, I love this. And I called them up, and I said, if you can do 20 more songs like this, you've got it.
And there was one more piece that would come together to add even more clout to the musical genius behind this production.
I'm backstage at the Grammys, and Quincy's there because he's performing on the Grammy Awards. And he says, aren't you producing The Color Purple as a musical? I said, yeah. And he said, why don't you come over to my house tomorrow and play me some songs?
And Scott came out, and he started to play me the songs, and I know Scott does not play around. You know, he is really serious. One thing led to another, and somehow they hooked me. I was just hooked, you know. I had a lot to do, but I was hooked, and something I really wanted to be a part of.
And I said, okay, I did not come over here thinking this, but would you be willing to join me as a producer on this musical? And he said, I'd love to.
They didn't use any of our music, you know, from the picture. I tried to get it in there. They didn't need to.